So, friends, how's it going? Um, there is quite a lot that I can talk about. I mean, there is too much going on in my head right now. So, but there has to be some topic that has to be picked up. So, I've been hearing a lot in the Indian media, especially in the Hindi media, uh, about what's going to happen to Pakistan and how Pakistan is finding itself in such a dire situation, and nobody is going to help it out, and whether or not it's going to disintegrate, or there are going to be civil war, or there are lots of speculations going on about Pakistan in Indian media, and I think even in Pakistani media itself they have a lot to talk about. Uh, I would really like the Indian media to focus elsewhere also, because there are challenges coming up that are serious nature, because now India has an aspirational class. India has an ambitious agenda before it. India is fast becoming an economic superpower and hopes to become a military superpower as well. Now, the immediate concern that I see, and I've been hearing about this because there is a lot going on in the Western media that the Indian media doesn't quite follow, or doesn't quite have interest to follow. They better understand Pakistan and some of the experts and analysts from there, and so they usually engage with them, and that's just about it. That's just the strategic, that is the strategic outreach that Indian media mostly, is content with. The immediate concern that I see is the AUKUS, which is the Australia, UK, and US. All of these three countries are now trying to equip Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. Now, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was here in India, and he has put it on record that he has briefed about the deal to Prime Minister Modi. But what I want to point out is this, I'm trying to connect dots, and please bear with me for some time, and please let me analyze the whole situation for you and see if you agree with me. Now, the thing is, Mr. Jaishankar, and I really want to tell this, in the West, they really like to hear what Mr. Jaishankar has to say. And a proof of that is that Mr. German Chancellor, Mr. Olaf Scholz, and the Italian Prime Minister, Madam Giorgia Meloni, they both have actually responded to what Mr. Jaishankar said in earlier, security meets. So I think it was in Slovakia when Mr. Jaishankar actually put it quite simply that, the Europe has to come out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, and that the world's problems are not Europe's problems. Okay, so that I think was heard quite loud and clear in the West. Then again, I think he was in interaction with some Swedish or Norwegian journalist. It was a one-to-one interview, and that also went viral. But I think in that also, Mr. Jaishankar again clarified that the term alliance, when he was asked whether India is an ally of Moscow, Mr. Jaishankar responded by saying that no, the term alliance or the ally system is a Western concept. We don't subscribe to it in India. Okay, so this is what he said in plain English. Then again, I think in Slovakia, I think security meet, Bratislava or something. I'm not quite remembering how it's spelled and how it's pronounced. But in Slovakia, I think he also made it plainly clear that when he was asked that there are two axes primarily in the world. There is one US-led West, and there is the other China-led, whoever is part of that. So India has to choose between one of them. Okay, and that is how things are going to be. So then Mr. Jaishankar said that we are the one-fifth of humanity. I mean, India is one-fifth of humanity. We have a tremendous population. We are a growing economy. We have an ancient civilization. So you can't impose that construct on me. That is what he said. That India needs to be with this camp or the other, and if it's not with this camp, it must be with the other. That kind of construct cannot be imposed on India. So this is again, he clarified before the Western media. So all of these things must have, gone to the, the strategic planners, the ones who are actually the deep state, the ones who are actually trying to picture how it's going and what next to do. So in that context, I think the AUKUS deal is very interesting, because the AUKUS deal actually equips Australia to be able to operate a nuclear submarine to begin with, but then I think there will be a pressure on the Australian government to actually also make such submarines in Australia itself, because obviously that would mean that it would create a lot of jobs in Australia, and so in that context, Australia would push both UK and the US to bring some manufacturing, some submarine manufacturing in Australia itself. I think that both countries would be willing to do that in some period of time. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that now, there are like a whole bunch of European powers and the American powers, and Australia is now being prepared to do that. All of these are going to be, all of these powers are going to roam about in the seas near us, okay, in Indian Ocean region, in South China Sea, in Mediterranean, in Pacific, anywhere. So all of these are going to occupy the maritime spaces around us, the maritime spaces that we are dependent on for our trade. And we are dependent on a lot of trade from Russia for the past year or so, because we've been procuring a lot of oil from Russia, and that comes in very large crude carriers. And so obviously, it suits us that these maritime spaces remain uncontested. But the kind of deal that the UK and US have come up with Australia, I mean, the US operates a large fleet of submarines, nuclear-powered submarines. Now the Australians are going to be able to do that, I think, in a couple of years. So I don't know. I mean, like, all of these maritime spaces are going to be contested for India, because it's either going to be the Chinese or it's going to be the Americans or its allies. So India has to. I mean, India cannot. I mean, if a naval fleet or a submarine fleet comes along, India can't argue that we are non-aligned and we are in neither camp. You have to prepare yourself. And I think India realizes this, as soon as possible, because India would then have to really, step up in its submarine building capability, in its warship building capability, in its aircraft carrier building capability, and also, the long-range bombers India needs to have, and India needs to really think about where it's going to place those long-range bombers, because the kind of geography that we have, we are vulnerable from all sides. And China has made it sure that India is quite vulnerable, even down south. If we position our long-range bombers procured from Russia, it can't be said that those are really safe from a sudden strike. So the thing I'm trying to point out is that the AUKUS deal should ring alarm bells in New Delhi, and that you really need to think about your defense preparedness, but also a long-term strategic thinking, that where India wants to be and with whom it's going to ally itself. And there needs to be, because I think America has realized that the one mistake that it has done is allowing China to grow to the extent that it's been building a large navy, and that's how it's begun to contest American power everywhere. And America is in such desperate condition that America has had to diversify. I mean, like it has spread out in more number of military bases because it fears that a sudden strike from China in a couple of American bases would really cripple the capability of the Americans to mount a counter strike. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that India, if a country like America, a $20 trillion economy and hundreds of billions of dollars of defense budget over the years, even when Soviet Union disintegrated, even when China was not a threat, that defense preparedness, that urge to have the edge over the others, that has continued. So now that America has experience and America has sour experience with China, it's not going to want to, provide that space to others. So now when we look at, American defense preparedness, it might look like it's all directed against China. But then what you need to understand is that for whatever reason, if something happens in China, then it could very well be directed against India. I mean, if India does not play ball. And to that extent, I think India and Russia have to sit together and they have to really think about where to go from here, because Russia also needs a country like India, and India definitely needs to go on, to go on having strategic and very close and confident relations with Russia. We can't abandon that, and I think this is the kind of picture that what I wanted to connect the dots is that Mr. Jaishankar has been saying some things in the West. And now, what America has decided, we've been hearing about the AUKUS deal for quite some time now, but only recently we have come to know that one such nuclear submarine would be handed over to the Australians this year itself. So if that is the kind of, speed with which America is operating, then it must have some strategy in mind. And we can only speculate about it. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the same things, now our perspective is different. We know that China is a threat. So now our perspective is that all of this is directed against China. But what I want to repeat is that all of this can very well and very easily and within a matter of days can equally be directed against India if India does not play ball, or if there is such an urge in the West, right? And we don't have a presence, we don't have as substantial a presence in these waters, okay? So I think we need to step up, and I think if Mr. Jaishankar has, clarified to the West that we are not aligned and that we are going to maintain and we are going to go about with our strategic autonomy, then we need to, put those words into action as well, which means that we need to have our own indigenous defense industry, building up really big. We need to be net security provider, okay? And we need to make sure that we are not dependent on anybody, never again.